India's contrasts are breathtaking. Its rich history, a complex tapestry woven into a modern world of technology and spending power of young professionals. The blossoming of the new India is still deeply connected to old ways and customs, despite the frenetic pace of life. Almonds have always been an important part of culture here in India, but consumption has surged lately, especially post-COVID. It's quite the opening. Almonds are Australia's most valuable horticultural export, and Asia is critical to that. The industry's hoping for even greater trade incentives going forward for the humble little nut. In Old Delhi, amid the shadows of the historic Delhi Red Fort, you'll find the walkways bustling with vendors and astute shoppers at the historic Kadiboli markets. Established in the 17th century, it's the biggest spice market in Asia and a touch point for much of the trade in town. The middle class might be starting to shop in supermarkets, but the bulk of trade is still done in places like this market in Old Delhi. For more than a century, Raju Bhatia's family have been wheeling and dealing in spices and nuts. It's a sixth-generation family dynasty with staying power.
Almonds are part of our culture. Every mother feeds about 10 almonds to her kids every day in the morning if she can afford it.
Trading routes and partners have changed considerably at times for his family, but Australia has always been on his radar.
I was one of the pioneers of the Australian almonds way back around 2000, which is almost about 25 years now.
It's delicious. I don't reckon we get the same ones at home. They're tastier than the ones I've had.
He's now one of the biggest importers in India of Australian almonds.
The customer base in India has been growing at about 15 to 20% per annum. The government of India had declared almonds as a health food during COVID also. And people are getting educated about the health benefits.
As India rides a wave of change, Rahu's family and many businesses like his are finding new ways with almonds as consumers demand healthier snacks from plant products. Turns out his daughters have always been nuts for almonds too. Continuing the family dynasty, they started their Nutty Gritties business in New Delhi in 2009 to capitalise on the health trend they were experiencing in the younger generation. They were the first to do so in their country on such scale and have been rewarded for their foresight.
We do sell across 30 plus cities in India. We have about 6,000 plus touch points in the country. We sell about 500,000 packs. And yeah, this number is growing. We've had a very humbling journey. It started small, but we're growing and we have plans to grow more.
What they've strategically tapped into is a changing consumer, no longer eating nuts in just a traditional sense, but the fitness fanatics and also time-poor emerging generations.
Gen Z has come in, we love enjoying our food. We're very well aware about health. We started making conscious decisions about food, and that's where nuts and dry fruits play such an important, such a critical role.
So how does Australia make further inroads into this market? The season's harvest wrapped up in May on the $1 billion commodity, making it Australia's most valuable horticultural export. Exports to India have increased by 114% on the previous season. The industry believes the free trade agreement between Australia and India is a key factor.
The free trade agreement has had an instant impact for almonds. We've seen the amount of almonds exported double this year to a record level. So they now represent 20% of all our exports. So what's happened is the tariff has been reduced by 50%. So that has given us a 50% tariff advantage over California, who are the biggest importer of almonds into India.
India is second to China as Australia's largest almond market, but the industry is confident that will shift in the future.
Hopefully, in the next couple of years, we could increase the quota to 50,000 tonnes.
One business with a front seat on the action is Select Harvest, one of the largest almond companies in Australia.
And we're starting to look at volume and how we can increase that volume in that Indian market. And that's really driven by the value add that's happening in the market. It's not just that retail demand and snacking demand that we're seeing, but we also see it being used in beverage, confectionery, bakery, muesli, which is developing markets in the Indian market, which is really driving that volume.
But getting into India is one obstacle that many commodities share equal frustration.
India is all about relationships. If you find that right match, if you find the right importer, everything is sorted. You don't need to worry about anything. All the bureaucratic things that you think about or worry about or you hear about, they get nullified because you know the right person knows the right way.
Ahmed heads up the Forum of Indian Food Importers with its 5,000 importer members. And he has some home truths for Australian exporters across all commodities and industries.
But consistency is the key. That is one of the challenges that I've seen from the Aussie side, that they are not that consistent. You cannot sit 10,000 miles away from us and think that you're going to capture the market, but you need to put your foot on the ground and try to understand what are the obligations, how the consumer is changing, and understand the consumer behavior where you are going to put your product in. And once you do that, we've seen huge successes for brands from across the world.
Oh, good to know a delivery, but that's been struck really well.
And in the almond world, that's not just boots on ground, but cricket bats too.
Our pride's on the line after losing the first game so badly. The Delhi Dazzlers gave us a hiding, so we've got to pull our pants up and have a better game next game for sure.
A friendly, well, so they say, cricket contest organised between all the major nut nations and importers has even the most jet-lagged bodies moving at a field in New Delhi.
Coming here and playing cricket against the various teams yesterday, having dinner, meeting them, the processors and the marketers develop this tight bond which allows, in tough times, to ensure that negotiations and dealings are conducted in a fair and equitable way.
By 2025, the farm gate value of almonds is tipped to reach $1.3 billion. The Lower Murray is now the second biggest almond producing area in the world after California, which grows 80% of the world's almonds. The advantage for Australia is that our crop is counter-seasonal to California. As well as the raw nut, there's also a major interest in processed almonds, including the very Aussie flat white.
You might be surprised to know the cafe culture is going cuckoo here in India. But they're not just chasing any caffeine fix. From cappuccino to cortado, single origin to exotic blends, the coffee consumer is increasingly discerning, and that includes a growing preference for plant-based milks. The oat and almond lattes fly out the door here at KC Roasters, a cafe with a decidedly Australian vibe in the heart of Mumbai.
It's massive from day one. We had so many people come in and say, I want barista quality almond milk. And I think the reason for that is because people in India are very sensitive around gut health. They're very sensitive around skincare. And particularly with the hot temperatures, there is an increased awareness that vegan milk or vegan beverages are really good for both gut health and skincare.
Sydney-born Shannon D'Souza is part of the massive disruption to the coffee scene in India. An idea fuelled by being unable to find a decent drop of coffee anywhere.
So you're like, I'm going to have to do this myself. Was it that simple?
Yeah. Every time you travel overseas, the first thing you'd look at in a city is like, who's serving barista-style coffee? And I think that's your way of just feeling at home in that city and gathering your thoughts and feeling there's a bit of Australia wherever you're travelling, you know?
But helping to introduce Australia's coffee culture to India took some work.
There were no baristas in the country when we started in 2016. There were no roasters in the country,
No.
so we were teaching our guys to roast.
Consistency is critical, and high-grade beans and milk are key. And the domestic plant milk just wasn't cutting it.
We were trying to work with almond milk suppliers in India, and obviously it wouldn't texture well.
Partnering up with Australian company Numi has resolved that.
And so we went about closing that gap and developing a product that works in specialty-based coffee. And the opportunity for our brand and our business is that there's no real brand that's doing that. And to present that to customers, coffee shops and cafes in India is exciting and really an opportunity for the brand.
Their brand, Milk Lab, are the biggest exporter of plant milks in Australia, and it's setting its sights on expansion into Asia and the Indian subcontinent. In a market that seems only to be on the up. With half the population below 25 and the largest adolescent population at 253 million, these young, savvy, health-conscious and ethical eaters are a dream customer for the almond trade.
It's a great time to be in business right now. India is at the forefront. We've got great opportunities. India is growing, our economy is growing, our GDP is growing. We see Indian consumers making informed choices. We're spending on products in which we see value. We've seen some phenomenal kind of products in India. We've seen innovation in India.
Alongside that innovation in India, incredible and growing opportunities for Australian agriculture.